The red lights flashed across the bridge of the massive Vexharine command ship. Admiral Ziegter stood 8 feet tall, his dark blue skin covered in the battle scars that marked him as one of the most feared military leaders in the galaxy. His forearms moved quickly across the control panels as he read the latest reports from the Outer Rim territories. For 300 years, the Vexharan Empire had ruled most of the known galaxy. They were stronger than other species, smarter in battle, and their technology was far beyond what most worlds could dream of. When they arrived at a new planet, the choice was simple for the locals: surrender or die. Most chose to surrender, but today, something was different. The reports coming from the edge of their territory spoke of a strange new world. A small blue and green planet that the locals called Earth. The species living there called themselves humans. "Show me the data again," Ziegter ordered his science officer. Lieutenant Vaxel, a younger Vexharine with bright green eyes, pulled up the information on the main screen. "The planet is third from its star. The humans have divided themselves into almost 200 separate groups. They fight each other constantly." Ziegter's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a laugh among his people. "They fight there. Own kind? How foolish. What is their technology level?" "Very low, Admiral. They barely have space travel. Their weapons use chemical explosives and simple projectiles. They have only recently learned to split atoms. By our standards, they are still primitive." Another officer spoke up from across the bridge. "Admiral, there is something strange in their behavior patterns. Our spy drones have watched them for several months now. When these humans are threatened, they do not run away like most species. They seem to become more dangerous." Ziegter turned his large head toward the officer. "Explain. In their recent conflicts, we observed that human military units often fight harder when they are losing. Instead of surrendering when faced with superior numbers, they find new ways to fight back. Some even sacrifice themselves to damage their enemies." "Interesting," Ziegter mused, "but not concerning. Every species has its strange habits. Their primitive weapons cannot hurt our ships. Their small armies cannot stand against our legions." The communications officer suddenly looked up from her station. "Admiral, we are receiving a message from High Command." The massive form of Supreme Commander Vekvo appeared on the main screen. His ancient face bore the marks of 1,000 battles, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Admiral Ziegter, you have read the reports about this human world?" "Yes, Supreme Commander. A primitive species, barely worth our attention." "Perhaps. But the High Council has decided that we need to send a message to the galaxy. There have been whispers of rebellion in some of our territories. Some worlds think they can resist us because we have not conquered anyone new in 50 years. They forget why they should fear us." Decker nodded slowly. He understood the politics of ruling an empire. Fear was just as important as strength. "You will take the 4th Battle Fleet to this Earth," Vekvo continued. "You will broadcast our intentions across all known space channels. Let every world see what happens to those who might think of resisting the Vexharine Empire. Make this conquest public. Make it swift. Make it brutal." "It will be done, Supreme Commander. How many ships should I take?" "Take 50 ships. More than enough to destroy their entire civilization, but not so many that it looks like we consider them a real threat. The other species must see that we can destroy worlds with ease." The transmission ended, and Ziegter turned back to his crew. "You heard the Supreme Commander. Prepare the 4th Battle Fleet. We leave for Earth in 6 hours." As the crew began their preparations, Ziegter studied the data about Earth one more time. The planet had large oceans and green land masses. The humans had built cities across most of the habitable areas. Their population was nearly 8 billion individuals. Such a waste, he thought to himself. So many lives that could have served the Empire if they had simply surrendered. But Zektor was a practical military leader. He had conquered 43 worlds in his career. He knew that sometimes entire populations had to die to send a message to the rest of the galaxy. It was the price of maintaining order across so many systems. 6 hours later, 50 massive Vexharan warships jumped to faster than light speed, heading toward the Sol system. Each ship was over a mile long and carried enough firepower to level entire continents. The smallest vessels in the fleet were larger than anything humans had ever put into space dock during the journey. Zektor held briefings with his ship commanders. They planned their attack carefully. First, they would destroy all human military installations from orbit. Then they would land troops in major population centers. The humans would have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. If they refused, the Vexharan would begin destroying cities one by one until the humans begged for mercy. Remember, Zektor told his commanders, this is as much about the message as the conquest. The galaxy is watching. We must show them that resistance to the Vexharan Empire is impossible. 3 days later, the fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. The humans had primitive satellites and space stations, but nothing that could threaten even the smallest Vexharan ship. Begin the broadcast, Zektor ordered. Across thousands of worlds, on every frequency that intelligent species use for communication, the same message began to play. It showed the Vexharan fleet approaching Earth, and Zektor's voice spoke in the common galactic language. People of the galaxy, witness the fate of all who think they can exist without joining the Vexharan Empire. The humans of Earth have been selected to demonstrate why resistance is futile. Watch as their primitive civilization falls in a matter of days. Let this be a lesson to any world that dreams of independence. On distant planets, in hidden rebel bases, and in the palaces of nervous rulers, billions of beings watched the broadcast. Some felt fear, others felt anger, but all understood the message. The Vexharan Empire was still the strongest force in the galaxy. As his fleet moved toward Earth, Zektor felt satisfied. This would be a simple conquest. The humans would see his ships and immediately understand how hopeless their situation was. Within a week, Earth would be another Vexharan colony, and the galaxy would remember why they should never challenge the Empire. But deep in the back of his mind, Zektor remembered what his science officer had said about human behavior. The way they fought harder when threatened. The way they refused to run when facing superior enemies. He pushed the thought away. Every species had strange behaviors until they met the Vexharan Empire. After that, they all learned to behave the same way, with complete obedience. The blue and green planet grew larger on his view screen. Soon, Zektor thought, this would all be over, and the galaxy would once again fear the name of the Vexharan Empire. He had no idea that he was about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. The alarms began screaming across every military base on Earth at exactly 1432. Greenwich Mean Time. Radar stations from Australia to Alaska detected the same impossible sight. 50 massive objects had appeared just beyond the orbit of Mars. General Sarah Chun stood in the Pentagon's command center, watching the largest screen she had ever seen fill with data that made no sense. The objects were huge, each one larger than any city on Earth. They moved in perfect formation toward the inner solar system. "Ma'am, we're getting similar readings from every space agency on the planet," reported Colonel Martinez, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "These things just appeared out of nowhere. No heat signatures from rocket engines. No radio communications we can understand." "How long until they reach us?" Chan asked. "At their current speed, approximately 18 hours. Chun had been a soldier for 30 years. She had commanded troops in 3 different wars and had never backed down from a fight. But she had also never faced anything like this. She picked up the red phone that connected directly to the president. "Mr. President, We have a situation. Within 2 hours, every major world leader was in emergency session. The United Nations building in New York had never seen such chaos. Translators worked frantically as presidents, prime ministers, and generals tried to understand what they were facing. President Williams looked exhausted as he addressed the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, every space agency on Earth confirms the same thing. We are being approached by unknown vessels of impossible size. This is not a drill. This is not a mistake. We are facing what appears to be first contact with an alien species. The Chinese premier stood up. What are their intentions? Have they tried to communicate? We've sent signals on every frequency we know. No response so far. The Russian president leaned forward. My scientists estimate these ships could carry millions of troops if they are hostile. He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood. Then the communication came. Every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth suddenly displayed the same image. A tall, four-armed creature with blue skin and cold eyes stared at them from what was obviously the bridge of a spacecraft. Primitive humans of Earth, the creature spoke in perfect English, though its voice was translated into every language simultaneously. I am Admiral Ziegter of the Vexharan Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. The creature paused, and behind him humans could see other aliens working at control stations that looked far beyond Earth's technology. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Your governments will dissolve. Your military forces will stand down. Your people will accept Vexharan rule. If you comply, some of you will be allowed to live as workers in our empire. General. Chun felt her hands clench into fists as the alien continued. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why the Vexharan Empire rules most of the galaxy. We will destroy your cities one by one until you beg for the mercy of slavery. You have no weapons that can harm our ships. You have no technology that can match ours. Resistance will only increase your suffering. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. President Williams was the first to speak. 72 hours. What are our options? Asked the British Prime Minister. General. Chun stood up slowly. With respect, sir, there's only one option. We fight. Against that, the German Chancellor pointed at the blank screen. General, did you see those ships? Our most powerful nuclear weapons probably couldn't scratch them. Maybe, Chun replied. But I'd rather die fighting than live as a slave. Across the room, other military leaders were nodding. The Japanese defense minister stood up. General Chun is right. If we surrender, we lose everything that makes us human. Our freedom, our culture, our future. But if we fight, we might lose our lives, countered the French president. The Brazilian representative slammed his hand on the table. Then we die free. My grandfather fought against oppression his whole life. He taught me that some things are worse than death. For the next 6 hours the debate raged. But something strange began to happen. Reports came in from around the world. In cities and towns everywhere, people were not panicking. They were not running. Instead, they were preparing to fight. In Mumbai, engineering students were studying the alien broadcast, trying to understand the technology they could see in the background. In Detroit, auto workers were discussing how to modify their factories to build weapons. In Tel Aviv, military strategists were analyzing the alien ship formations for weaknesses. The president of Mexico stood up and looked around the room. My friends, I think we are asking the wrong question. We keep debating whether we should fight. But look at the reports from our own people. They have already decided. The question is not whether we fight. The question is how we fight together. As if his words had broken a dam, the room suddenly filled with new energy. The South Korean Prime Minister pulled out his phone. Our tech companies want to work together on analyzing alien technology. Samsung, LG, and our defense contractors are already sharing information. The British Prime Minister nodded. Our universities are volunteering their entire research staffs. Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, they all want to help. President Williams felt something he had not expected: hope. General Chun, what would you need to coordinate a global defense? Complete cooperation, Mr. President. Every military, every scientist, every engineer working toward the same goal. No politics, no national interests, just survival. You have it. The next 18 hours became the most remarkable period in human history. Old enemies worked side by side. Russian scientists shared their research with American engineers. Chinese manufacturers opened their facilities to Japanese designers. Israeli intelligence worked with Palestinian communications experts. The aliens had given humanity 72 hours to surrender. Instead, humanity used those hours to do something they had never done before: truly unite. When the Vexharan ships entered Earth's orbit, Admiral Ziegler expected to see chaos below. Fleeing populations, collapsed governments, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, his sensors detected something that puzzled him. Report, he ordered his science officer. Admiral, the human electromagnetic communications have increased by 3,000%. Instead of decreasing as populations flee, their information networks are more active than ever. What are they communicating about? Unknown, sir. They have changed all their encryption methods. Our translation systems cannot decode the new patterns. Ziegler's mandibles clicked with annoyance. No matter, begin the demonstration. Destroy their largest military installations. The first Vexharan. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, vaporizing military bases in the United States, Russia, and China. The alien admiral expected immediate surrender messages. Instead, the response that came 12 hours later was broadcast on every frequency Earth could manage. President Williams appeared on screen, but he was not alone. Behind him stood the leaders of every major nation on Earth. Admiral Ziegler, Williams began, his voice steady and calm. We have received your ultimatum. Here is our response: no. The camera pulled back to show more leaders. The Chinese premier stepped forward. We choose freedom. The Russian president nodded. We choose dignity. The Brazilian president raised his chin. We choose to fight. One by one, every leader spoke the same message in their own language. Then Williams returned to the center of the screen. You said we have no weapons that can hurt your ships. You said we have no technology that can match yours. You may be right. But you made one mistake, Admiral. You assumed that we would act like every other species you have conquered. You assumed we would be afraid. Williams paused, and for the first time since this began, he smiled. Humans are not afraid of impossible odds. We are inspired by them. You have 72 hours to leave our system. If you refuse, you will learn why humans are the species that fought wars against themselves for thousands of years and called it practice. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Ziegler staring at a blank screen, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Admiral Ziegler stood on his command bridge, staring at the blue planet below. The human deadline had passed 6 hours ago. Their defiant message still echoed in his mind. No species had ever given the Vexharan Empire a counter-ultimatum. Not in 300 years of conquest. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving transmissions from across our empire. Other worlds are asking about the delay in conquest. Some are requesting permission to observe the battle. Ziegler. 4 hands clenched. The galaxy was watching. Every conquered species, every potential rebel, every ambitious rival was waiting to see if the mighty Vexharan Empire could be challenged by primitives. Begin orbital bombardment of their major cities, he ordered. Target their capitals first. Show them the price of defiance. But as the first energy beams charged, Lieutenant Vaiksel called out from his station. "Admiral, sensors detect massive movement on the planet's surface. The humans are doing something. Explain." "Sir, they appear to be evacuating their cities in an organized pattern, not random panic, coordinated movement. Their population centers are emptying in systematic waves." Victor paused. Every other species had either huddled in their cities, hoping for mercy, or fled in chaotic terror. Organized evacuation meant planning. It meant the humans had prepared for this moment. Fire anyway. Empty cities will still send a message. The energy beams struck Earth's capitals. London, Washington, Moscow, Beijing, all disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. But instead of surrender messages, Earth's response was immediate and unexpected: missile launches. Hundreds of them, rising from hidden locations across the planet. Victor watched with amusement as the primitive weapons approached his ships. Their explosive warheads would barely scratch Vexharan armor. The first missile struck. Victor expected tiny flashes of light against his hull. Instead, his ship shuddered. Alarms began screaming across the bridge. "Damage report," he roared. "Hull breach on Deck 7. "These aren't conventional explosives, Admiral. The humans have somehow weaponized their atomic fusion technology. Each missile carries the explosive power of a small star." Victor felt something he had not experienced in decades: surprise. "How is that possible? Our intelligence said they barely understood atomic physics." "Sir, it appears our intelligence was wrong. These weapons show clear evidence of rapid technological advancement. They've taken their primitive fusion knowledge and pushed it far beyond what should be possible in 72 hours. More missiles struck the fleet. 3 Vexharan ships reported significant damage. One smaller vessel lost main power and began drifting. "Launch ground forces," Victor ordered. "Take their remaining cities. Show them that they cannot hide underground forever." Transport. Ships filled with Vexharan soldiers descended through Earth's atmosphere. Each warrior stood 7 feet tall, carried energy weapons that could melt through steel, and wore armor that had protected them through 100 conquered worlds. They landed in what had been New York City. The ruins still smoked from the orbital bombardment, but the transport sensors detected human life signs in the underground areas. The Vexharan troops would flush them out and force their surrender. Captain Threxile led the first squad into the subway tunnels beneath the ruined city. His thermal vision showed human heat signatures ahead. Finally, an easy victory to restore their reputation. The humans struck from 3 directions at once. The weapons they used defied everything the Vexharan knew about human technology. Projectiles that moved faster than sound, explosives that seemed to bend reality around them, and tactics that turned every corridor into a death trap. But what shocked Captain Threx, most, was not their weapons. It was their behavior. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. When cornered, they did not surrender. They found ways to hurt their attackers even while dying. When outnumbered, they used the environment itself as a weapon, collapsing tunnels to trap Vexharan soldiers, or flooding passages to create chaos. Worse, they adapted. Within hours of first contact, human soldiers were using captured Vexharan energy weapons against their former owners. They studied fallen alien equipment with frightening speed and figured out how to use it. "Captain," one of his soldiers reported, "over the communication link, the humans are not fighting like other species. They seem to enjoy the challenge." Threxel had noticed the same thing. When facing impossible odds, these humans did not show fear. They showed determination. Some even seemed excited, as if this was the greatest test they had ever faced. The battle raged for days. The Vexharan controlled the surface, but the humans controlled everything below ground. They had turned their entire planet into a fortress, with hidden weapons, underground factories, and supply lines that seemed to appear and disappear like magic. Reports came in from around the globe. In what had been Tokyo, human defenders had somehow created energy shields using modified alien technology. In the ruins of Paris, human engineers were building weapons that combined alien energy systems with human innovation. In former Moscow, human soldiers were using captured Vex-Harane armor, but had improved it with their own modifications. How is this possible? Ziegler demanded of his science officer. They should not be able to understand our technology, let alone improve it. Admiral, I have been analyzing their behavior patterns. I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood this species. Explain. Sir, humans appear to be what we might call adaptive warriors. They do not just fight, they evolve during conflict. Every challenge makes them stronger. Every setback teaches them something new. Lieutenant Vaxel pulled up data on the main screen. Look at their learning curve, Admiral. In just 1 week, they have advanced their technology by what should have taken decades. They are not just using our weapons, they are improving them. Ziegler stared at the data. It was impossible, but the evidence was clear. These humans were becoming more dangerous with each passing day. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we are receiving reports from across the Empire. Other worlds are watching this conflict. Some of the conquered species are asking questions about human resistance methods. What kind of questions? They want to know how humans are able to fight back so effectively. Some worlds are requesting detailed information about human tactics and technology. Ziegler felt ice in his veins. The last thing the Empire needed was for other species to learn that resistance was possible. Sir, another officer reported, we have lost contact with the ground forces in Sector 7. Last transmission indicated they were facing humans using some kind of new weapon that disrupts our energy shields. New weapon? They have been fighting us for only 1 week. Yes, sir. But according to our analysis, humans appear to innovate faster when under pressure. The more we threaten them, the more creative they become. Ziegler looked at the planet. Below, what was supposed to be a simple demonstration of power had become a grinding battle against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of war. These humans did not fight like prey animals seeking to escape a predator. They fought like predators themselves, learning from each encounter and becoming deadlier with experience. On the bridge screens, new reports flowed in. Human resistance cells had appeared in cities that had been declared pacified. Human engineers were building factories in hidden underground locations. Human scientists were developing new weapons faster than the Vex-Harane could adapt to them. Most disturbing of all, the humans were broadcasting their resistance methods to the galaxy. They were teaching other species how to fight back. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, we are receiving messages from 17 different worlds in our empire. They are reporting organized resistance movements. The rebels are using tactics similar to what they have observed from humans. Ziegler realized with growing horror that this was no longer just about conquering one primitive world. The humans had done something far more dangerous than resist. They had shown the galaxy that the Vex-Harane Empire could be fought, and worse, they had shown them how to win. The emergency council meeting on the Vex-Harane homeworld had been called for the first time in 50 years. Supreme Commander Thikval sat at the head of a table surrounded by his most trusted generals and advisors. The holographic display in the center showed a galaxy map with disturbing red dots spreading across former Vex-Harane territories. Explain this situation, Thikval demanded, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries of absolute power. General Korthax, commander of the 3rd Sector, stood up nervously. Supreme Commander, we have active rebellions on 23 worlds. The conquered species are using tactics they learned by watching the human resistance broadcasts. How is this possible? We have controlled these worlds for decades. Some for over a century. Sir, The humans have been transmitting detailed information about their fighting methods across all communication channels. They are teaching other species how to build weapons from captured Vexharian technology. They are sharing tactics for underground warfare. Vekval's four fists slammed against the table. One primitive world is causing rebellions across our entire empire. Not just causing them, Supreme Commander. Leading them. We have detected human communication signals, coordinating resistance efforts on multiple worlds simultaneously. The Supreme Commander turned to his intelligence chief. How are humans communicating across such distances? Their technology should not be capable of faster-than-light communication. They appear to have captured and modified our own communication equipment, sir. But they have done something we never thought possible. They have improved it. The hologram changed to show technical specifications that made several generals gasp in surprise. The humans have increased the range and efficiency of our communication systems by 40%. They have also added encryption methods that our own experts cannot break. Somehow, in just 2 months of war, they have advanced beyond our technology in specific areas. Vekval stood up slowly, his massive form casting shadows across the room. Show me the current status of Admiral Zichter's forces at Earth. The display changed to show the Sol system. What they saw made everyone in the room fall silent. The Vexharan fleet was no longer in orbit around Earth. Instead, they were scattered throughout the solar system, clearly on the defensive. Human ships, obviously built using modified alien technology, were engaged in running battles with Vexharan forces near the planet Mars. How do the humans have a space fleet? Vekvel roared. General Vorthale, the military's chief strategist, answered carefully. Supreme Commander, it appears the humans have taken a completely different approach to warfare than any species we have encountered. Instead of trying to defend their homeworld, they have used it as a base to build an offensive capability. Explain. Sir, while Admiral Zichter's forces were fighting ground battles on Earth, human engineers were constructing spacecraft in hidden facilities on their moon and on asteroids throughout their system. They have built not just ships, but weapons that we have never seen before. The display showed footage from a recent battle. Human ships were smaller than Vexharan vessels, but they moved faster and seemed to ignore damage that would disable other spacecraft. What are we looking at? Asked General Korthax. Human kamikaze tactics, but with a technological twist. Their ships are designed to function even when heavily damaged. When a human vessel is about to be destroyed, instead of trying to escape, they ram into our ships at maximum speed. But just before impact, they eject their crews in small escape pods that other human ships rescue. That's impossible. No species would waste ships in such a manner. Sir, humans don't see it as waste. They see it as tactical advantage. They are trading damaged ships for undamaged Vexharan vessels. And they are building new ships faster than we can destroy them. Vekval felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of life. Doubt. How many ships have we lost? 17 vessels destroyed, 31 with major damage. Admiral Zichter is requesting immediate reinforcements. And human losses? Unknown, sir. Every time we think we have destroyed their forces, more ships appear. They seem to have production facilities throughout their solar system that we cannot locate. The intelligence chief stepped forward. Supreme Commander, there is something else. We have intercepted human communications discussing something they call Operation Prometheus. What is that? We don't know, sir. The humans have changed their encryption again. But the name appears in communications from human forces throughout the galaxy. Throughout the galaxy? How many humans are there beyond their homeworld? That's just it, sir. There shouldn't be any. Humans have never left their solar system before our arrival. But we are detecting human communication signatures from rebel forces on conquered worlds across 17 different sectors. General Vorthal pulled up new data. Supreme Commander, I believe the humans have done something unprecedented. They appear to have sent small groups of their people to other worlds, specifically to organize and lead resistance movements. How? We think they captured some of our transport ships and used them to spread their people across our territory. But sir, these are not random raids. This appears to be a coordinated military strategy on a galactic scale. Vekvil stared at the galaxy map. The red dots representing rebellion were spreading faster than his forces could respond to them. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We are receiving a transmission from Admiral Zector. The battle-scarred face of the Admiral appeared on the screen. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed signs of damage and emergency repairs. Supreme Commander, I must report that the human resistance has reached a critical phase. They have moved beyond defending their world. They are now actively hunting our forces throughout their solar system. How is that possible, Admiral? Sir, these humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They don't just adapt to our tactics, they anticipate them. When we try a strategy that worked on other worlds, they are already prepared with countermeasures. What are you saying? Supreme Commander, I believe these humans have studied our entire military history. They know how we conquered every other species, and they have developed specific responses to all of our standard methods. The transmission flickered as explosions rocked Zector's ship. Admiral, what is your current situation? We are under attack by a human strike force. Sir, they are not trying to drive us away from their planet. They are trying to capture our ships intact. And they are succeeding. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Vekval realized that everything had changed. The Vexharan Empire had built its power on the assumption that superior technology and ruthless tactics would always defeat inferior civilizations. But these humans had turned that assumption upside down. They had taken Vexharan technology and made it better. They had studied Vexharan tactics and developed counters. Worse, they had spread this knowledge to every oppressed species in the galaxy. Sir, the intelligence chief said quietly, there is one more thing. We have decoded part of a human transmission about Operation Prometheus. What does it say? Sir, the humans are not planning to just defend themselves or even drive us away from their world. They are planning to attack our homeworld. The room fell completely silent. That's impossible, General Korthax whispered. They don't even know where our homeworld is located. Sir, they captured Admiral Gector, Admigration Officer, 3 days ago. Vekval felt the weight of his empire's future settling on his shoulders. For 3 centuries, the Vexharan had been the hunters. They had chased other species across the galaxy, conquering and enslaving as they pleased. Now, for the first time in their history, they had become the hunted. And the species hunting them had learned everything they knew about warfare, had improved upon it, and was teaching it to every enemy the Vexharan had ever made. The Supreme Commander looked around the table at his generals and advisors. In their eyes, he saw the same realization that was growing in his own mind. They had not just failed to conquer a primitive world. They had awakened something that might destroy them all. 6 months after the first Vexharan ship arrived at Earth, Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's first true interstellar warship. Through the viewscreen, she could see the blue-white star that warmed the Vexharan homeworld. Around her, human and alien crew members worked side by side at control stations that combined the best of both technologies. Admiral, reported Commander Yuki Tanaka, her tactical officer. Long-range sensors confirm the Vexharan home fleet is moving to intercept us. 200 ships, including their planetary defense platforms. Chun nodded calmly. And our forces? 87. Human vessels plus 43 ships from the liberation fleets. The Kethmari have arrived with their entire remaining navy. The Zorthak brought their mining platforms converted to battleships. Chun smiled. The galaxy had changed dramatically in 6 months. Species that had been slaves for centuries were now allies, fighting alongside humans against their former masters. They had learned not just how to fight, but how to hope. Communications, open a channel to all ships. Channel open, Admiral. Chun looked into the camera that would carry her words to thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds. This is Admiral Chun of the United Earth Space Command, speaking to all allied forces. Today we reach the end of a journey that began when the Vexarian Empire made the mistake of thinking humans would surrender without a fight. She paused, thinking of all the changes that had brought them to this moment. The underground factories on Earth that had produced ships using alien technology. The human volunteers who had risked everything to reach other worlds and teach resistance. The alien species who had chosen freedom over safety. The Vexharine ruled through fear. They convinced the galaxy that resistance was impossible. They were wrong. Today, we prove that no empire built on oppression can stand against free beings who refuse to accept slavery. Through the communication link, she could hear cheers from the crews of dozens of different species. All ships. This is Operation Prometheus. We finish what they started. The combined fleet moved toward the Vexharine homeworld like an arrow aimed at the heart of tyranny. On the planet below, Supreme Commander Thekval watched the approaching armada from his command center deep beneath the surface. His empire was crumbling around him. Half of their territories were in open rebellion. Their fleets were scattered across the galaxy, trying to hold together an empire that was falling apart from within. "Sir," his aide reported, "the defense fleet is moving to engage the human forces." Human forces, Thekval repeated bitterly. 6 months ago, they didn't even have space travel. Now they lead a galactic rebellion. Through his sensors, he watched the battle begin. The Vexharan ships opened fire first, their energy weapons creating brilliant flashes in the darkness of space. But the human response was unlike anything they had faced before. Instead of engaging in a traditional space battle, the human ships spread out in small groups, each working with alien allies who knew Vexharan tactics from decades of oppression. The former slaves fought with desperate courage, while the humans provided the tactical coordination that turned courage into victory. "Sir," his fleet commander reported, "the humans are using some kind of new weapon. Our ships are losing power when hit." "What kind of weapon?" "Unknown, sir. It appears to disable our systems without destroying them. Almost like they want to capture our vessels intact." Thekval understood. The humans were not just fighting to win a battle. They were fighting to capture the technology and resources. They would need to rebuild the galaxy after the war. The battle raged for hours. Slowly, inevitably, the Vexharan defense fleet began to fall back. Their ships were better armed and better protected, but they faced enemies who fought with the desperation of the enslaved and the tactical brilliance of humans who had studied every aspect of Vexharan warfare. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." Admiral Chun's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Thekval could see beings from multiple species working together on the human ship's bridge. "Supreme Commander Thekval, I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Space Command. Your fleet is defeated. Your empire is in rebellion. Your homeworld is defenseless. I offer you one chance to surrender." Thekval felt centuries of pride and power warring with the reality of his situation. "And if I refuse? Then we will do to your world what you plan to do to ours. But unlike you, we will give your people a choice. Those who wish to continue fighting can face the consequences. Those who choose peace can help us build something better. You would spare civilian populations?" "Supreme Commander, humans fight to defend freedom, not to create more suffering. But make no mistake, Your military power ends today, one way or another. Vekvel looked around his command center. His officers watched him with faces that showed the same realization he felt. The Vexharain Empire was finished. The only question was how many would die before they accepted that truth. I need assurances about my people. You have them. Any Vexharin who lays down their weapons and accepts the new galactic order will be treated fairly. Those who choose to continue oppressing others will face justice. For a long moment, Vekvel said nothing. Then slowly, he reached for his command console and entered the codes that would shut down all Vexharan military systems. I surrender. 3 days later, Admiral Chun stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the former Vexharan capital. Representatives from over 100 worlds filled the massive chamber. Species that had been enemies for centuries sat side by side, united by their shared experience of liberation. The ceremony was simple. There were no grand speeches about conquest or empire. Instead, beings from across the galaxy took turns speaking about their hopes for the future. The representative from Kethmari, a world that had been enslaved for 200 years, spoke first. Today, we do not celebrate the defeat of an enemy. We celebrate the birth of freedom. The Zorthak ambassador, whose people had been forced to mine asteroids for the Empire, stood next. The humans taught us that resistance was possible. Now we must learn to live without fear. One by one, the liberated worlds shared their plans for rebuilding their societies. Trade agreements replaced tribute payments. Military alliances became partnerships between equals. When it was Chun's turn to speak, she kept her words brief. 6 months ago, the Vexharan Empire made contact with humanity. They expected us to surrender. Instead, we chose to fight. But more importantly, we chose to share what we learned with others who had forgotten that freedom was possible. She looked around the chamber at faces from dozens of different worlds. Today marks the end of the Vexharan Empire. But it also marks the beginning of something better. A galaxy where no species rules over another. Where differences are celebrated instead of crushed. Where freedom is not a privilege to be granted, but a right to be defended. The chamber erupted in cheers that echoed in dozens of different languages. Later, as Chun prepared to return to Earth, she received a message from her former opponent. Admiral Ziekter, now a prisoner awaiting trial for war crimes, had requested to speak with her. "Admiral Chun," he said when they met in his cell, "I must ask you something. How did you know you could win?" Chun considered the question carefully. "We didn't know we could win, Admiral. We only knew we couldn't accept losing. But you were so much weaker than us. In technology, yes. In numbers, yes. But you made one mistake. You assumed that strength comes from the ability to conquer others. Humans learned a long time ago that real strength comes from the refusal to be conquered." Chun turned to leave, then paused. "Your empire lasted 300 years by making other species afraid. Humanity will build something that lasts longer, because we're teaching other species to be brave." As she walked away, Chun thought about the long journey home to Earth. The planet that had been marked for conquest was now the center of a new galactic alliance. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had become the teachers of freedom. The universe had learned that it was never wise to challenge humans. But more importantly, it had learned that with humans as allies, no tyranny could stand forever.